Hello and welcome to AXSChat. We're delighted to have Caroline Casey join us this week. Caroline is the leader of Binc and has just completed an epic journey across South America, in Colombia, I believe, on a horse, talking about how businesses should be more inclusive. It's a fairly far out way of raising the profile of inclusive business. So I'm very interested to find out how you ended up riding through Colombia on a horse and what it was that ignited your passion for both horses and for inclusion. And tell us a bit more about Binc while you're at it.
Okay, that's a big, long shopping list.
We're nothing if not ambitious here.
Okay. Well, I tell you how I got into it, how I got into the whole space of social entrepreneurship was actually through an elephant. And so I have this whole passion about combining adventure and change. The reason I was on an elephant about 18 years ago is I finally came out of the closet about my sight. I have a severe low vision. I'm registered blind, and the condition I have is ocular albinism. And I had found out about it when I was 17, but told nobody. So I had successfully gone through 11 years of my life and gone to business school and gone into Accenture and told nobody, because I was so convinced that if business knew that I had a disability, they wouldn't see me as a valuable employee. Anyway, so I lied. I got into Accenture and was happily working there. But over a period of time, because I wasn't getting the very available help and assistance that exists if you have a vision impairment, and because I was stubborn and vain, I temporarily damaged my eyes and had to come out of the closet and speak openly about my sight. And doing that, I needed to take some time off. Just medically, I needed to do it for my eyes to recover. And how I did that was to fulfill a massive childhood ambition and go across India on an elephant.
Wow.
So that's how it all began. And when I did that, going across India on an elephant, as you can imagine, the idea of a visually impaired Irish blonde girl on an elephant in India, it got a bit of attention and way more than I ever thought. And so therefore, I started to be asked by the media about why I was doing this trip. And I was doing the trip, number one, is just to kind of rebuild my own confidence again. But then I got into I started to discover the huge issue around disability and the exclusion of people with disabilities in general. And then I was so shocked to realize that the issues of disability in business were extreme, that business in 2000, because it was when I started in 2000, that people with disabilities were not employed, they were not treated equally as consumers or suppliers, members of the community. And I remember when I was doing the big elephant trip, I wrote to like thousands of businesses, because I was raising money for Sightsavers International. And every single business, with the exception of Accenture, said, we don't do disability. And you think, what? I mean, what do you mean you don't do disability? I was so surprised. And so that is the beginning of the work that I've been doing then for 18 years, because I was thinking, what do you mean you don't do disability? What do you mean you don't want to do business with us? And so when I came off the elephant, I spent 18 years working to try and engage business in the business case for inclusive business and disability. I'm obsessed with brands and marketing. I thought it was a brilliant opportunity for brands to position themselves. I've worked alongside many people for years. We had created methodologies. We've worked with over 500 companies. And the things that I saw that were working were, we need to do lots of campaigning. I can't believe that we still need to do it. We need to get people talking about brand and what it means for a brand. And the allies in this conversation is the next generation, because they see inclusion totally different and they're very discerning about where they spend their money and where they work. And then the other thing that I saw that really worked is that when you get good leadership, I mean, right at the top, okay, that's when stuff really happens. And when Sheryl Sandberg came out, how many years ago, 2009 or 10, to write her book, Lean In, and she's this amazingly well-known person, and she has the Facebook brand behind her, suddenly the conversation about gender and work changed. It's not that people weren't doing it before, but wow, a brand and a leader. And I was like, well, why can't we not do that for disability? And so that's been my obsession, is about leadership and brand and marketing and business case and access to markets and the next generation. So why Colombia? Well, I'll tell you why Colombia is. I wanted to do this worldwide campaign that was very much focused on leadership and leadership agendas. And it was tricky because if you're going to do a big campaign like that, I'm not a celebrity, I don't have lots of money. Well, how are you going to get people's attention and to engage in it in a completely different way, in an unexpected way, because I wanted to do something that was different. And I thought, well, I always wanted to be, ride elephants. Well, I've always wanted to ride horses, which I always had. And I thought, well, why don't I go back to what worked 18 years ago and bring adventure into this idea of this campaign and do something utterly unexpected. I was given the opportunity to speak on the main stage of One Young World, which is that great juicy generation who I know can make the change happen. And that was in Bogota in Colombia. And so all the pieces kind of lined up to say, okay, horse, Colombia, stage, next generation. And that's what I decided to do, that we would announce our worldwide call to action on the stage of One Young World, which we did on the 6th of October. But to get momentum and to get people talking, how we entered that main stage is we rode 1,000 kilometers from Cartagena in Colombia to Bogota. And that was 1,000 kilometers, a 31-day journey. We saw disability experience on the ground in Colombia, and we reached 33 million people and 150,000 impressions. I'm a total Luddite. That is apparently really great. But it meant when we got on the stage, I could say, this matters. So.
Excellent.
Is that
totally unpacks the story. Actually, I love the elephant, and of course, disability is the elephant in the room as far as business is concerned. So I know Deborah's got a question, so I'll hand over to Deborah.
Yeah, Caroline, you impressed me so much. We're all doing this, Antonio, Neil, myself, the community of AXSChat. There's so many people doing this. And I'm with you. I believe that we've got to change the conversation with the brands, and we've got to really focus and tell their good stories and their emerging stories, because being in the United States, even though I work globally, I meet corporate brands all the time in the US, and without fail, they will start the conversation with me by apologizing. Yes. And they'll say, we haven't done enough. We're so sorry. But, and it's like, okay, but you're here and you're in the conversation. So that matters. And so I have a book that's coming out this month. I might actually, on the day on disabilities, but the International Day on Disabilities, but December 3rd, right? But and the title of the book is Inclusion Branding. So it's talking about this topic. And I really need to make sure that I grab information about you, Caroline, and put it in the book, because I think the way to continue to change people's minds about the benefit that we all can bring to the workforce, to society in whole, is to continue to break down the barriers of what does it mean to be a person with a disability? What do the Carolines of the world look like? I mean, we all, having a disability is a normal
human condition.
Part of being a human being. It's just normal. Yeah. And I sometimes hear people in the US say, well, if you're not disabled yet, you're going to be. And that sounds like a threat. That sounds, I don't like that language. Instead, the reality is we have these fragile bodies and we can move in and out of it. We can do what you did, Caroline. We can pretend like it's not here, but I think that the work you're doing is very powerful. And I know that I am proud to work with the International Labor Organization as a client. And Stefan Trammell had said to me, Deborah, she's doing, I know, I love him too. And I already knew about what you were doing under the hashtag valuable, but I thought, how can we help even more? And so I like your spunkiness. I like your personality. I like your purpose, and we want to help. And so I would wonder, what more can we do to support what you're doing and continue to help change brands' minds about the value that including people with disabilities add to their brand, and why is it important to them?
Well,
That's a big question.
So the thing is, like, the most important thing you said, that there are so many people out in this space, right? There are so many brilliant people who've been working in this space for decades. And and you're one of them. As I said, I have a crush on you. Like, you've been a hero of mine for a long time. So, you know, there's a lot of people out there. I don't know, do you agree? But it seems to be over those decades that we've kind of been in this space, things, at least disability is included in the agenda now, which is good. But we're seeing kind of, aren't we seeing sort of like pockets of change, but we're not seeing a collective massive noise. And so what Valuable, so the campaign, which is called Valuable, and the thing that we were very specific in what we wanted to do. We wanted to highlight the great work being done by other people, to show there are people out there to help the companies. We wanted to show the agitators out in that space as well, because I think if we can bring all the people who are helping the companies, people who are working in the space, people around accessibility, we're showing a huge, not just the 1 billion people in the world with a disability, but a huge ecosystem around it that, you know, so more people, more noise, right? So the big thing is to get as many people talking and having a conversation. But Valuable is literally making this decision to do the next stage. And we had 3 very clear things that we wanted to do. And I would love everybody's opinion, challenge. It doesn't matter if you agree or don't agree. Actually, I'd prefer conversation rather than no conversation. So our challenge in Valuable is to do 3 things in the next 14 months. And it will not be getting on a horse or a giraffe or anything like it. Now is the hard, you know, stepping on the toes of CEOs, is that we want to get 500 companies to put disability on their board agenda. Okay, on their board agenda. Now, some have done it. So for the companies that have done it, well, please tell us you've done it. Good for you. Amazing. For those, because you know what, you're so right, Deborah. Everybody always says, oh, I'm so sorry we haven't done. But even by you starting to have the conversation is great. And one of the brilliant things that happened in One Young World is Fossil, you know, the wearable brand. They have done nothing with disability. But they did the most powerful thing, because they stood on the stage and said, you know what, we've really invested in race or gender, and we've done nothing on disability, but we want to begin. And I'm that is amazing. So like, even the companies who have, but then I want to hear the companies who are doing really good stuff so they can be the role models. So we want to get 500 companies to put it on their board agenda. Unilever just signed up a few weeks ago. Renault have just done it. Latham & Watkins, the biggest law firm in the world. So if you get that, it's going to be on a board agenda, and that means it has to be minuted, and that means there's going to have to be action. The second thing we're trying to do is find 3 to 5 Sheryl Sandbergs. So big clouded business leaders who will stand with this conversation so they can mobilize the change and they can talk about brand. And I really want to get more CMOs, because like the CMOs are amazing. So that kind of juicy leadership that can stand with all of you doing the work you do. And Deborah, that you can go into way more organizations. Do you know what I mean? So that we're opening up more doors, yeah? And the third thing is, I really want to disrupt Davos. Like, I so want to disrupt Davos. I want to get inclusive business and disability on the plenary stage of Davos, either in 2018 or 2019. Because when they did it with LGBTQ in 2012, do you know what happened? Well, the Fortune companies hopped on board and tried to, and if one Fortune company does, another Fortune company does. So it's very specific what Valuable is doing, but in all of that space, we want to generate as much conversation, regardless if whether you're a person with a disability or a family member who has, or an expert in the field or a writer. We want everybody talking and making noise. That's what we want to do, and highlighting the really good stuff that's out there.
I'm
well said. Well said.
you, especially on the stuff for Davos. So that's part of my strategic plan. I'm zeroing in on it now. So it's really important that we do Davos. I actually think that aside from just getting disability on the agenda, we need economic frameworks for this kind of
100%.
stuff. And I've been doing some research on this stuff, and we've got some stuff to talk about around the externalities of the cost of not doing it. So the cost of exclusion versus the perceived cost of inclusion. So So Davos is key, because you've got everyone in one place. Yeah. And if they start talking about it, you're right, the businesses adopt it. And once the businesses adopt it, you start the ball rolling. And we've seen tremendous change in LBGT, QIA, keep going, Neil, over the last number of years since it made the main stage. So yes, it's really important to get it in fora like that, where you've got global decision makers that can actually listen and can actually action it.
And you know the good news about this, Neil, is so on the 6th of October, when I was at One Young World, I was so cheeky, like I was so bold. I was categorically told I was not allowed to do this. So as I finished our session, I challenged, there was like 1,500 delegates in the room, and I knew there were some CEOs in the room. And I said, okay, so I'm tired of you saying that you want to do something, we'll do something. So if there's any CEO in this room who wants to get up and help us do this, stand on the stage with me. And Paul Pohlman, the CEO of Unilever, stood on the stage, as did Ronan Dunn, the global CEO of Verizon, and a good few others. But Paul Pohlman, because Unilever is a strategic partner of Davos, and he has taken it upon himself to talk to Klaus Schwab to see if we can get this happening.
Fantastic.
So, but like Neil, it's not just the plenary one. If we were to get plenary, we also need to have side sessions as well. Do you know what I mean? It's not just one conversation. So, but it's to have it main stage, and like when you've got somebody like Paul Pullman helping, then we may have some chance. But like we have to do it.
I'm with you, and again, we're working with a number of people that are also engaged with WEF on their inclusion initiatives. So let's talk afterwards.
Great, cool.
No, one of the things that we notice is there's already employees from those companies talking about this topic online. So, we are trying to engage leaders, but the employees are already having this type of conversation.
Yeah.
So I think once you do that, you are able to express that inside your organization, people will join, will be on board, and be more than happy to be part and to support the efforts and commitments from their CEOs.
Well, you know, that's the thing, because One Young World is about the companies sent their young talent under the age of 30. And after our session, you know what was so exciting? Because I've always said the allies to make this change just for valuable, okay, just for us, was the under 30s and the CEOs, and you put them together, wow, magic could happen. Well, the amount of young people who came up, who said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go knock on the door of our company. I've had so many young people from the delegates, like, and what the feedback was, is this is the topic they wanted to work on. Like, of all the topics that were there, you know, we actually seemed to, we got them, we engaged them, and they're now going back into their companies, not us, they're doing it. So that's the exciting bit, right? Because there are companies who've never even talking about disability, and they said that to me. And by the way, Deborah, I did use your name. So I said, well, you know what, you need to go, because they're in the US. I said, go talk to Deborah. You know what I mean? So I can now start pointing people who've never done that, but it's coming from them, and they're going to take the responsibility to go to their CEOs, which is exciting.
We often, due to AXSChat, we often receive messages when we talk about accessibility, when people want to know what that is, and especially when every time that when we talk about neurodiversity, we had people, what is neurodiversity? I never heard about that. Can we talk? Can we have a separate call? And I end up having calls on Skype at one-to-one with people, sending them to content that we have produced, content, posts that Neil has out there, and Deborah. And wow, and this is something completely new for me. Thank you so much for bringing this to my attention. And some of them, they stay in the community, they engage on AXSChat. Some of them are active, others they just go and read the tweets because they don't feel confident to participate. They like to read the information, or they come a week later to see what the conversation was. Mm-hmm. And it's quite opening to see people doing this. It's quite rewarding.
Yeah, it's great. I love when that happens, when you're sharing just a new way of thinking, and then they just go run with it. And that's, you're right, there is something quite exciting now. We're seeing so much more conversation. I think that's the exciting bit.
It is very exciting, and I totally agree. And first of all, thank you, Caroline. I love your work too, and I love your energy. I love your energy. Thank you. But I agree with you from several perspectives. And I want to encourage all of my clients to join at a CEO level. So I'm going to send you a note and we'll talk about this. But At the same time, I agree with you that it's going to come from the young people. That's what I've seen.
Totally, yeah.
I've seen they, like you said, and I'll just tell you a little story. So as a lot of people know, I have a grown daughter with Down syndrome. She's 30 years old. When she was going to middle school in the United States, I was really worried that she'd be bullied by her peers because, you know, I'd heard stories and stuff. Well, she wasn't. She wasn't at all. These young people were really wonderful to her. And my son walked more bullying than my daughter, my son without a disability. So that's when I first started thinking the young people, they are changing the world. They're changing the world. And I'm with you, as I got more and more into this work. I started my work in 2000. I saw the young people don't see the barriers that people my age see, and they don't want to divide us all into little groups. And I was talking to a man today from Salesforce, and we were talking about really the only protected class in the United States right now. We really love to segment people, are the white males that are under a certain age. Everybody else is protected in some way.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and it confuses the corporations too. So I'll also tell you that I know that Frances West, who was formerly Chief Accessibility Officer for IBM, she spoke at the World Economic Forum.
Yes.
But as you said, though, it wasn't a plenary, you know, and it wasn't, and so we've got to have that and then all the pieces. Yes. But your energy is really beautiful. And I believe people are going to change their minds by seeing better energy, which is what we're always trying to do with AXSChat. We've been shocked at the success of AXSChat, but it's because people like the energy of what we're doing. So, but I totally agree with you. The young people are going to change everything. And we certainly have given them a lot to do. So it's very exciting. So I love the success that you had there. And, you know, how do we help get you into even more places and more conversations? And I like also, Caroline, that you're doing what we, the three of us, try to do, and that we don't make it just about ourselves. This is about all of us, all of us. You can't just have one person at the top, blah, blah, blah. No, you need a huge whole community that includes all of the stakeholders having these conversations. So how do we help elevate what you're doing to help all of us?
Well, the thing that I when I met Antonio on Friday, I was saying that I wanted to talk to all three of you because I wanted to make sure that this work that we were doing, that was complementing our sector, that it wasn't causing a problem, that it wasn't taking away from anything else, that it wasn't standing on anybody's toes. And so I knew I was going to get to talk to the three of you today. There is nothing better. And that's why it's so good to have this conversation with you guys, and other people will join in. Is this work or this plan that we're going to do for 14 months, do you think it's valuable? How do you think we can do it better? Tell me what you don't think is right. And so for the three of you, I would love to run that strategy by you when we finalize it off, and for you to poke holes in it and say, well, could you think about it doing this way or that way? Because that's what I need. It's because, you see, we're just tiny as well. We're just a group of people doing it. And though we might think we're doing a great job, we may not be. And I just want to know, is it valuable, and how you think we could make it better? Because it's 14 months. It's hardcore 14 months to make as much noise as possible to make this happen.
And I have just a quick clarifying question. Why 14 months? Is that just what you have the funding for? Because we don't want you to go away in 14 months. We want this to go on for a long time. And we do want to see you on a giraffe at some point. So
well, I'd love to be on a giraffe. I'll tell you what, 14 months is because there's nothing like a hard deadline. There's nothing like a really tight deadline. I don't think Binc should be operating forever and ever, amen. I really don't. I actually also believe if in this period of 14 months, we can start identifying the younger generation of leaders in this space to carry this forward, that would be amazing. Wouldn't it be incredible? In a way, I would love to see me disappear, actually, and see other people come into the space. I was very reticent actually about leading this for exactly the same reason that you're talking about, because it's not about a person. It really isn't. But you need people to talk to. But wouldn't it be great to have more people and more younger people leading in this space? I'd love it. So if you've any idea of young people under the age of 30 who'd be interested in getting involved in the campaign, oh, please let us know. That's really, really important. But the other reason that 14 months is because I think campaigns shouldn't go on forever. Okay, we've only been in this for 2 months. And I think of ourselves, the reason I wanted to put a stop on it is January 2019 would, at the end of that, would be Davos. So even if I get it on plenary stage this year, then I can report back next year. Mm-hmm. If I don't get on stage this year, I can get on stage next year. So that's how I kind of bookended it, thinking that was a good stop and start point. So that's why the short period of time. And also, I think making this happen, Deb, was the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. The hardest thing I have ever done. And you know, I spoke to 53 companies to try and make this happen. And for all the reasons that you said, they were scared, but they also, they didn't have the resource. There were other competing priorities. And so money is a factor as well. You know, it's really hard to raise money for this. It's really hard. Yeah. My husband and I had to take a remortgage out of our house. So it was hard. So I think keeping it fast and clean and short is good.
Okay, I mean, we salute your bravery for putting your money where your mouth is. It is tough, and I agree that sometimes it's quite hard to get funding for some of this stuff too, especially in companies, because there are always competing priorities. Yeah. But I think that with the stuff you're doing with Valuable, with the business case and all of the rest of it, and with the opportunity for a sea change, that I think that the funding is there. It's a big market. It's a huge market.
I know.
And companies invest in large markets all of the time. They just don't invest in this one.
Because they don't know about it enough.
So that's you know, they're investing in it under a different name. You know, they're investing it in the over 50s or the grey market, you know, or the silver surfer. So there's lots of things we need to do to make them understand what it means to be inclusive, and really what it is to market inclusively, employ inclusively, because again, we want valuable jobs. We want to be valuable contributors to your organization, to their organization, to, you know, any company. And we can be, if we're given the chance.
And I think the reason that Deb's book is so important now, because it is talking about branding and marketing. And I think actually what we're all trying to do in the end is actually remarket disability to business anyway. But the reason that I love the book and what it's doing, or the idea of a book like that, it's talking about brand benefit, brand positioning. There's a massive opportunity here for a business. Look, we watched all the early adopters, you know, scrabble, you know, for the positioning around green, and companies desperately trying to attach something to their brand other than bottom line. This is a massive opportunity. Like, why companies are not jumping for this, I don't know. So it's really having a new way of talking about it, isn't it? And getting them to see that market's there, and it's just there for the begging.
Yeah, I think so. And I know Deborah's got a question, but I think some of it, and some of the reason why companies haven't grasped it is because they're nervous, they're scared, because to a certain extent it's always been seen as a thorny issue, and because sometimes the community has gone on the attack rather than working with the organizations. So there is a reticence. We need to overcome that. Deborah, I'll shut up now.
No, because you know what? I'm sure that Antonio's the same way. I totally agree with what you just said. Why? Why are companies not doing this? I know why they're not doing it in the United States. The United States, because we have created an us and a them. And so a lot of the brands in the United States actually are working on this, but they're very afraid to speak about it, because we have seen when they come up and they speak about it, they actually have, you know, they get in even more trouble. I wrote an article once called "No Good Deed Goes Unpunished" about, you know, what was happening with Disney. They were being celebrated for the successes, and in the same thing being sued over it. And so I think that we've created a divide, and we had a big event in Washington, D.C. with the International Labor Organization's Global Business Disability Network. 40 corporations were there. They were so stoked. And then somebody, a very well-known disability leaders said, well, some of you are using the wrong language. And it was like somebody dumped ice water on everybody. It was the energy in the room dropped. People got really afraid. So I think some of the reasons why we haven't had success are because they're just not exactly sure what to do, because we all come fight with each other about what it is they want us to do. How do they know when they're successful? Also, I think it's because they have the wrong people involved. And I think it's because I think you've got to be talking about this from a brand perspective. We all agree with that, because you can use to tell us that you're a good brand is very important across the world, and especially to the young people. But you can actually use your conversation about what you are doing to include people with disabilities, customers, employers, the supply chain, as a brand differentiator. And so I think brands like Atos are starting to figure this out. Brands like Barclays are a supporter. You know, Barclays is wonderful. The UN is trying to support it. People like you, Caroline, and we don't want you ever to step out of the conversation, because we always need the different voices with the different perspectives coming from the different backgrounds and the different, you know. So I just think there are a lot of reasons why we haven't had the successes. But I believe I'm very hopeful. I think that we are about to shift dramatically, and I think what you're doing is going to be one of those major, one of the major changes. So we're very blessed by your work, Caroline.
Can I ask you a question? Do you also see that maybe that business still see disability in a more, they don't see their place in it because they don't see the value of the market, to Neil's point. And that's why we call the campaign valuable, because we're saying it's like the value and worth of the 1 billion people as a market right across the value chain of business. It's not just about employment. This is about the full supply chain of a business. One of the things that I've come across, and I don't know have any of the three of you, is that disability is still seen as charity. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
it's still
yes,
a charity.
totally agree.
Oh, yes.
So it's a CSO issue, or it's a government problem, or it's, you know, they don't see medical, it's all confused. So there's these sort of stereotypes of charity, you know, medical, government, and they're not seeing the business opportunity, which is amazing that we're still having this conversation, right? But you're right, like it's not, they don't see this as a market. They don't see this as a game for them. I think that's how
No, I agree. And also I'll say, and then I'll let Antonio go, that what we're seeing is the advocates that are trying, the experts that are trying to get them to change their mind are using language that still is charity and medical models. So we, the community, are actually contributing to those problems. Antonio, I jumped in before you did, so you go.
No, exactly. We often say that communication is also part, let's say, of accessibility. The way how you communicate is really important, and it can actually define the way how the whole engagement is going to happen. It's really decisive in that matter. But one of the things that Caroline was saying about the medical side of things, we try to bring people who have some sort of impairment to AXSChat, because they are leaders, they are developers, they have their own professional activity, and it's important that that we use a space where they can talk about their work, not about and their abilities, not to focus on their disability. That we found that is really, really important.
And it is, and I think that's the other thing, that when we were saying invaluable, we want to bring all of that community together, people who are working, thriving, leading, regardless of experiencing disability, people who are working in the space of helping business and business themselves. See, if we bring all of us together, what a loud noise we're making in changing the narrative that exists. And one of the things that really impressed me is L'Oreal, was it maybe 4 or 5 years ago, the CEO of L'Oreal, he went out to say, and he's in one of the ILO on the charter, and he went out to say that they want to increase their revenue by 1 billion in 5 years. And they were going to approach 3 new markets. And one of them was the disability market. And I think even in that sentence alone, how powerful that is, because it was pure business, right? And it was a CEO saying it externally, and I know what they're doing internally, because he challenged every single one of their regions, their 65 regions, to do work that would enable that to happen. Like, it might sound a small thing, but it was a really new way of a CEO saying how this is beneficial for business.
No, I totally agree. And going back to the previous point where we were talking about why, the wrong language, we as advocates, as campaigners, talk in the language of, of rights and so on, and business doesn't think about rights. Business is thinking about business. We need to, when we're addressing business, we need to talk in the language of business.
Yes.
And it's not that people don't have rights, but you're not talking in the right context. So whenever you're talking about these subjects, you always need to think about what context you're talking in and adjust your language accordingly. So it's really, really key to really hone in on the things that make business tick, and that's where's the next opportunity. And disability is the big opportunity.
Yeah, and I think that thing that you're talking about, being a chameleon in your language, is so true. Because when we did Valuable, obviously Valuable, the horse journey was for everyone. That was to get all of us to go back and reimagine what you wanted to be when you were little, right? When you thought you could be a cowgirl or an astronaut, and to bring that sense of wanting to allow everybody reach that potential. So that was an element. But then the Valuable campaign was very, very business language. And the media we did was very business orientated. And so I think you're so right, because if I stand with a group of people with disabilities, I talk differently. Of course I do, because it's very different. And I do feel that we all should have the right to belong and to be self-determining. But then when you're talking to business, you have to say, and I've got something to give you for that. You'd be lucky to have us. You'd be very lucky to have us.
I think that's a perfect point to end on. So thank you so much. We've reached the end of our half hour.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys.
And we're really looking forward to the Twitter chat tomorrow night. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Caroline.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
I forgot to say, and thank you to our pals at Barclays for keeping the lights on and helping us with the captains and everything else. Almost missed it.
We always want to thank Barclays.
Yeah, they're great.
We do appreciate you coming on, Caroline.
They're great. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.